Welcome to Ruxmalls and Overballs. You are back for episode 27 of the fans' favourite podcast, hosted by the fans' favourite podcast hosts. It's me, Dave, joined as ever by Rory. Rory, say hello to the listener.
Hello, listener. Hi. I'm only operating about 95% of the weight I started with this morning. The rest of it has melted out of me. So apologies if that comes across in my timbre.
Yes, there does need to be an early disclaimer in this episode that we are not gentlemen who are designed for the temperatures we are experiencing at this point. We are both melting. We have both locked ourselves in rooms with no windows open because of traffic noise. So if morale seems a little low, that is why. But Rory, how's your week going? How are you enduring this heat and enduring life?
I mean, enduring is probably the right word for it. Yeah, I mean, you know, as you say, we're not hot room boys, but there's been plenty of things to enjoy. There's been a lot of good games over the weekend that we're going to touch on. So lots to keep us entertained and lots to look forward to, with even more games coming up this weekend. So it's a strange time of year, watching summer rugby, but there's something very, very exciting about the summer tours. And, you know, looking at that fixture list on Saturday, you could go from 4:30 in the morning all the way through to about 10 o'clock at night and never have to leave the sofa, which, frankly, bliss.
The summer of rugby has started, and I am totally for it. The only pain in my side, Rory, as we've discussed numerous times on this podcast, my old gallstones, they're coming out soon, but it does mean I'm on a very, very significantly reduced 800 calorie diet at the moment. So not only am I sweating from every single pore, I am hungrier than I've ever been in my life, because 800 calories is not a lot, I can tell you that. So it's been an up and down week for me, let's say. But
mostly down, to be honest.
Mostly down, yeah, absolutely. But I must say, the rugby on the weekend has certainly helped lift the mood. So on that subject, this podcast, what we talk about, Rory, well, I'll tell you that. We're going to talk about the Lions, and also, quick disclaimer to the listener, oddly placed record time with a Lions talk, because we will be talking about Lions and releasing this podcast on the same day as a Lions game. But we can only talk about the previous Lions game, because we can only talk about the Force game, because we've not watched the Reds game, which is probably playing right now as you're listening to us. So understand that when we're talking about Lions, we may not be watching it with you. We have an interview with Archie McParland, Under-20s England player, playing in Italy right now. So we're going to have a good old chat with him. We're going to talk.
Very excited to speak to Archie.
Very excited to speak to Archie indeed. We're going to talk Under-20s World Cup. We're going to talk specifically about the England-Scotland game, and maybe pick out a few other notable moments or players from some of the other games. And then we'll talk through the Champions Cup group draw that took place today at time of recording, Rory, and see if there's any interesting narratives. Spoiler, I already know a couple. How does that sound?
Pretty good to me.
Pretty good. So let's just dive straight into it, Rory. And we're going head first, down under, Lions. And headline to start off with, before we get into the game, and I know this is close to your heart, Tomos Williams out, Ben White in.
Yeah, absolutely gutted for Tomos. Mostly just for him personally. It just for me, absolutely gutting feeling to have got to this stage. And across the first two games was one of the few players who'd really put his hand up to be a Test Lion and was looking pretty nailed on for at least a Test squad shirt in my mind after those first couple of games. So yeah, absolutely gutting. My heart goes out to him for that one, because it must just be heartbreaking for 4 years until the next tour. You know, who knows if he'll be able to make it to that one. So yeah, absolutely, the heart goes out to him on that. And gutting from a Lions perspective, just just from a team perspective, because he was playing so well. Yeah. He was playing so well in the game at the weekend, and he's a genuine loss to that squad. I think he's one of the real quality players. And there's not, Britain and Ireland are not France. We don't have dozens of world-class nines at our disposal, and he was one of a handful. Ben White's a great replacement. Good luck to him. Really hope he comes in and smashes it. But Tomos is a genuine loss, I think, to the squad.
He is, and I think if you talked to a general Lions fan who perhaps doesn't have particularly strong biases one way or another in the scrum-half department, I think to a man, most people would have been saying that Tomos Williams was either your test starter or at least your bench option. And the way he was playing, he was clearly in form. So yeah, absolutely devastating for him. Big loss for the team.
With Gibson Park seemingly struggling with an injury, we'll have to see how he goes against the Reds. So fingers crossed that he gets through that. If he pulls out or doesn't recover, the stocks start looking quite low really in that department. I think Ben Spencer maybe with a relationship with Finn Russell. Craig Casey's obviously got the Ireland squad knowledge. Jack Van Poorfleet's obviously been around the squad. But really, if you lose Tomos and Jamison Gibson Park, the quality levels really do drop there, realistically, from a test experience perspective, as much as anything.
And a lot of pressure comes on Alex Mitchell then, I think, as well, who himself doesn't have the same level of kind of test caps under his belt as Gibson Park and Williams. And, quality player Mitchell is, I'm going to back him up as a Saints fan. That's a lot of pressure on him to be available for those 3 tests, should he be the one selected. It'd be interesting. Hopefully, we the problem with Lions tours is every single tour you do get these injuries. It will happen inevitably. There will be more players who miss out because of injuries that are going to happen in the future. It's always gutting, and hopefully there aren't too many more. Because I still feel this is a really, really strong squad that can really make a statement.
Yeah.
On that,
100%.
100%. On that, what were your thoughts on the game versus Western Force?
Well, I mean, you've got to put it in a bit of context in that the Force are more or less the weakest of the Super Rugby teams in Australia. And they're not as high quality as, obviously, as Argentina the week before. And they're probably not as high quality as the teams to come, depending on squad selections. We'll see how that goes. There's obviously a bit of politics going on around that.
Yeah.
That being said, there's another game where there was a lot of positives to take out, particularly in some of the continuity with the ball in hand. I think what Farrell and the coaches are putting in place in terms of a game plan looks like it's coming together quite well. I mean, it's always a bit of a cheat code having generals like Finn Russell in the team who just are so good at running attacking game plans.
Yeah.
But I thought, generally speaking, actually both sides of the ball, you could see at least the beginnings of a very strong game plan. Really, really aggressive pressing defence. Not without its faults. Left a few dog legs, left a bit of space on the outside a few times, which...
There was a few soft shoulders, I thought, as well.
A few soft shoulders. Some pretty hard shoulders, but a few soft shoulders were in there. Where, against Australia, with the speed of their outside backs and their finishing ability, you think, right, they're going to have to get that right if they want to play that style of defence in the tests. But in terms of it being the second game together, a mix-up of the players, I was pretty pleased with most of it.
Yeah.
There are some areas that need to be addressed, though, aren't there?
Scrum is the big worry for me from that game, because I went into that looking at our pack thinking, we're going to absolutely smash that scrum, because our pack was, on paper, huge.
Yeah.
And we're going up against, no offence, but they called in Ollie Hoskins on a 1-game contract just so he can have his last game, back where he kind of started his career, made his name. And I'd probably say in the first half, had the Lions scrum going backwards.
Yeah, the starting front row in particular really struggled. And you're right, I mean, it's a heavy pack. Scott Cummins is a very heavy lock. McCarthy's a very, very heavy lock there. Ty Burnett, 6. Yeah. Van der Vlier's, relatively big for a 7. And that starting front row on paper should have been very, very powerful. what was pleasing was how powerful replacement props in particular were.
Yes, absolutely. That was how I thought it was going to be from the start.
Yeah, I mean, Porter and Stewart are probably the two best scrummagers in that squad at the moment. You know, I don't think Furlong, you could argue, but actually he's so out of form, and I think you saw that. Well, I say out of form. He's not played a lot of rugby, and I think that probably showed.
Yeah.
And he'll be all the better for having got 50 minutes under his belt. But I don't think the Australian scrum is massively destructive, but they've still got Angus Bell at loosehead, who is a big old lump to try and shift. They've got Ala Latoa. They've got Tupou. There are some scrummagers in that squad.
Yeah, it's not a weakness like it used to be, for sure.
No, they won't be on roller skates.
No.
So off the back of that, my gut feel is the starting props against Argentina and the two props that came on at the weekend have all edged themselves in the pecking order above Schoeman and Furlong. Might change, but to my money, those four look to be the ones at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly feels that way to me. But as you say, that there's still a few games between now and then. And I think there's enough games for players to find form and to lose form. So it'll be interesting to see. What about the rest of the set piece? Did the line out improve that much for you? I still didn't feel 100% satisfied.
It was better.
Yeah.
I would say it actually probably looked better when Chesham came on.
Yeah.
He's a more natural line-out forward than maybe Cummings and McCarthy are, who are more of your lumpy locks, your tight head locks, really. My gut feel is if you take the first two games at set piece, they are going to be more and more inclined to pick in a Byrne or Chesham at 6 than they were before.
Yeah.
Which is going to be a hard call with the back row talent they have there, but actually with the issues they had at restart as well.
Yes.
And the likelihood that Joe Schmidt will be watching that very carefully and considering his options at potentially picking Nick White to take those kickoffs again. My gut feel is they'll think we probably need 3 really solid jumpers, not just for lineup but for restarts as well, which will play into the hands of Chesham and Byrne. But yeah, it's difficult because the set piece isn't a simple thing to galvanise. It takes real continuity, and with 2 mixed up packs in the first couple of games, it is difficult to build that continuity, and you'll probably see that improve quite quickly.
Yeah.
But based on those 2 games, I think there's been a big shuffling of the pecking order in the pack.
Yeah, I think so. And you mentioned restarts there, which is, again, another area that I think was probably a bit of a concern. Is that something that could be fixed quickly? And is that just something from the fact it is a load of players thrown together for the first time? Or is that something that is going to be potentially still be exploited when we get to the Australia game? Is that something that can be easily fixed, do you think?
Well, it's probably something that took them a bit by surprise on the day, how good Nick White's restarts were. I've heard better kickers than me, of which there are many, talk about it, and actually the variation that Nick White was bringing, and Nick White is such a good player. He's one of those 9s. Yeah, I mean, he's always been a good 9, and he's one of those 9s that you think you'd love to play with him, and if you played against him, you'd love to fill him in. And that all the best 9s have that quality, I think.
Absolutely.
I didn't know he had that ability with drop kicks, and it was a real game changer because the variety of like the flight and the hang time, the angle of it all, really, I think, surprised the Lions, and they actually didn't adapt to it quickly enough, which is probably something they will have to work on and be more alive to, because you can't afford to give up field position to test teams in that way. It's probably just something they're going to have to look at this week and say, look, we've got to be alive to this, and we've got to be quicker to switch it up, and also probably hope that whoever is taking the kicks for the Wallabies isn't quite so good.
Yes, absolutely. On the performance itself, individuals wise, just how good was the mulleted marvel, Joe McCarthy?
Big unit, big hits.
What a performance.
Yeah. I would say well worth the man of the match, maybe rivaled by Russell, but for for a lock to have that many involvements, and I'm loath to praise locks too much, being a bit of an underclass in the forwards, but no, he was phenomenal. There was some really good. Obviously, he scored a nice try.
Yeah.
But the moment that really stood out for me was the Force had a maul on the 5 metre line, and he ripped through the maul, stole the ball, spun out, and got away. And was tackled fairly quickly, but got away from the maul itself, which meant the Lions could actually recycle the ball and kick it away. Those kind of involvements are the sort of things that really impress forwards coaches and will really impress Farrell, because actually being able to disrupt, we spoke about mauls last week with Mark, being able to disrupt mauls in that way and the set piece in that way is going to be massive. If you can remove that as a weapon in test match rugby, you've actually given yourself a really significant advantage, because kicks to the corner are such a big part of how teams try and get access.
Yeah.
So that sort of thing is massive. And then just the number of tackles, the number of rucks he hit, soft skills as well for the breakaway try off the turnover. He's the one who picks it up and passes the ball, cuts out 2 or 3 defenders for it. It's an all-round performance that he could be really, really pleased with, and will have definitely shifted him up in the pecking order.
Yeah, I think his stock would have risen.
Yeah, because actually he probably had a quieter season overall for Ireland in particular. He wasn't quite as destructive as he has been. Actually, in this game, he was right back to sort of rip, snort, invest. So he could be massively pleased with his performance. I think Dan Sheehan overall could be really pleased with his performance. I don't think the line-up issues are entirely down to...
No, I think the darts were fine, I think. I think it was more the timing and the jumpers than anything.
Yeah, which is, that's a several moving parts thing. So, but his all-round performance, his ability on the edge, obviously for his own try as well.
That was a nice
just
moment.
being able to, tapping the ball back inside, then tracking the ball and getting it back and scoring.
Yeah,
beautiful from a hooker. Fantastic.
Oh, considering that's his first bit of rugby since his injury as well.
Yeah. He's quality.
A nice feeling.
Yeah, no, he's absolutely quality. So he could be really, really pleased with that. Finn Russell was phenomenal. He was probably as phenomenal as we all expected him to be. Really.
Yeah. If not better.
If not better. Yeah. Just absolutely ran the game, and he knits things together so well. People would like to talk about his maverick player, but actually he's got that maverick ability, but he's also just got that real glue ability in the back line as well. So I think he's absolutely cemented his test shirt if it was even remotely in doubt.
Yeah.
Mack Hansen, really impressive.
Yeah.
Really busy.
Work rate.
Yeah. Work rate. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
there was a bit where he chased the kick back, spun out the tackle, kicked it back, and chased his own kick right down the other end. I mean, it must have been something like 150 metres worth of sprints he'd done.
Yeah.
Which disgusts me as a concept. So
there were some seriously long passages of play in this game. There was one where I was watching. James Lowe looked like he was running in custard, because the amount of running and back and forth he'd been doing, chasing kicks and stuff. I was like, this game would have been perfect for the conditioning. It looked like hard work.
Yeah, there was a lot of ball in play time. No, you've got to say that actually from a fitness perspective, actually they look pretty good given off the back of a long season. They look well conditioned so far, injuries aside. And then the last one that's really worth talking about, I think, is how good Elliot Daly's been.
I'm not going to disagree with you at all, Rory. If anything, it's a humble pie moment, because I was one of the many few who was maybe doubting that selection a bit. I take back what I said. I think he's shown his worth in both games already. And his versatility is actually worth his weight in gold. And the fact he is a test level player.
100%.
He was.
I think he proved that with England, didn't he? Yeah, he proved that with England in the Six Nations with how good his impacts were. His versatility is, it's absolutely invaluable. You cannot put a price on someone who can play 4 or 5 positions on the pitch. But actually, just the nuts and bolts of what he was doing, he was never in the wrong place. For every kick through, he was fielding everything, and fielding it well. He was returning kicks back, he's got a great boot on him, as we know, but he was running it back. He was making breaks. He was gluing play together. Some really nice soft hands for Ringrose's try. No, he's probably at the moment, he's probably got the 23 shirt, assuming that Kinghorn takes the 15.
Yeah,
but
he's perfect for it.
He's a perfect 23, and his performances, if they get better, are gonna ask some questions of who gets that 15, because he's not really let anything drop.
No,
you've got to say at the moment, just purely on the first two games. So I actually had a little go at this earlier today, and I thought, based on who's played in the last two games, what's your test 15?
Okay, yeah.
And at the moment, he's my 15 obviously on the basis that Blake Kinghorn's not played.
Yeah. Well, I'd certainly have him above Marcus Smith at this stage, I think, in the 15 shirt.
Yeah, you have to. I think Marcus has probably played well enough in that game and shown flash in the first game to think that the 22 shirt's well up for grabs for him.
Yeah. And when I said that, it was in no way suggesting he's been bad at all. I don't think he was that bad against Argentina. He certainly wasn't bad in the minutes he got in this game. So, yeah, when I said that, it definitely wasn't, to any Quins fans listening, it was not a dig at Marcus Smith before you get there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But actually, when I was working through this, at the moment, how many players have cemented their test shirt? I mean, absolutely cemented it after those first two games. It's not many. No,
I don't think it's many at all.
Russell?
I think Russell's cemented in the 10 shirt for sure, but that was kind of cemented before the plane even left, let's face it.
I think Sheehan in the 2.
That is probably 95% cemented for me. And I don't really know what that 5% would be.
Yeah, probably Itoje and McCarthy at the moment. I've probably cemented the locks.
Itoje's cemented because he's captain.
Peter O'Mahony might dispute that.
Good point, well made. But I still kind of, also based on performances, I think Itoje's probably cemented. Yeah. And would I say McCarthy's cemented? Off that performance alone, I'll probably say yes, but we still haven't seen James Ryan play.
Maybe not. Maybe he's not cemented yet.
There's still some players who haven't really had serious game time, so it's hard to say it's 100% cemented. Because, am I going to sit here and say Andrew Porter and Will Stewart are cemented starters? Off of their performance off the bench, I could probably argue that, but I need to see him start.
I think Ellis Inge would probably have a strong argument as to why he should have the one shot.
That's why I wouldn't say Andrew Porter's cemented.
Yeah, it's obviously too early to pick a test team.
Okay,
but I was just thinking off the back of who's played in that first two, who's really stuck their hand up.
Yeah,
and it's actually not many in terms of ripped trees out.
No,
but
there's still a lot of shirts up for grabs. I think
a lot up for grabs, and actually that makes the game today, as you're listening, really exciting. But it's exciting when there really is still a lot of unknowns.
I think it's a good thing, because I think the players will know that as well, and I think that will drive performances in training. It will drive the competition. It will drive things upwards to try and hopefully it'll be timed perfectly for the tests. And if you can go into the tests where the so-called midweek teams still know they're in for a chance of maybe getting into the second or third test, I think that just creates a good environment. But you mentioned it there, the game that's taking place tomorrow/today, depending on whether you're the one on the podcast or the one talking or listening on the podcast. What do you predict for the Reds game? Having seen the team, having seen the Reds team put out, what are you wanting to see?
I would say what I would hope is that they show the same level of ruthlessness in the 22. They were pretty good in this game. They finished off more or less every opportunity they got.
Very clinical.
So if they can continue to show that, just from a squad culture perspective, that's a really good thing to get nailed down, obviously. I want to see how well wingers in this game can get involved. Van der Merwe in particular.
Yeah,
he's obviously got Finn Russell. He needs a good game, and he's got Finn Russell there who knows, his strengths and weaknesses. He's got to go looking for the ball. I think Tommy Freeman's pretty good at that, but Mack Hansen's really thrown down the gauntlet for that kind of right wing position. So Tommy Freeman's going to have to put in real performance in this one to put his hand up. I really want to see Itoje quieten down some of the doubters who've been around in terms of his selection as captain, his selection in general. I want to see Itoje have an old school Maro Itoje performance where he is just phenomenal. And then in the back row, Conan has got an opportunity here to say that number 8 shirt is his. Pollock was good, but I don't think he ended the debate about number 8, and Conan's still the natural 8.
Yeah. Deliberately didn't say Pollock was a cemented starter on that basis.
Yeah, absolutely. That number 8 shirt is wide open depending on what they want to do, and Jack Conan's more than set up to take it. But I think that whole back row, in fact, I think that the whole back row in the test team is still up for grabs entirely. There's been no poor performances. There have been some less than outstanding performances.
Yeah.
And I would say that pretty much every back rower in the squad at this moment in time still 100% has the opportunity to start in the test team.
Yeah.
So that should really drive some standards from there. And I would hope that Tom Curry and Jack Morgan in particular, because those are the really competitive positions at 6 and 7. I could see them both going massive guns in this one and really putting 100%. And they're the kind of characters who will as well.
I think so. I'm excited by that prospect because I'm waiting for one of, if not both of those two, to really grab an opportunity. Because when those two players particularly get onto like red hot form, they're significant points of difference for a side. And if we can get them in that place for the Lions approaching the test games, we're golden. It's really,
they're absolute nails as well. They're nails.
They are nails. They are absolute nails. And I think they're the sort of players you're just glad they're on your side when they are on your side. But we won't dig too deeply into the Reds game because by the time we convene again, Rory, there'll be the Reds game taking place today to the listener. But there's also a game on the weekend. The problem with Lions is it comes quicker than we can talk about it. So when we reconvene next week, we can touch on the Reds game and we can touch on the game on the weekend against the Waratahs, I believe.
It is the Tars, yeah, down in Sydney.
Very glad my memory served me well. And then we go again. But for now, we will close the door on the Lions for now because time is precious. Time is precious because we have a guest coming on, and we're going to have Archie McParland on. So, first of all, we've got Archie with us now, Northampton Saints and England Under-20s scrum-half, coming here to chat to us, give us some of his very important time, and we're just incredibly grateful. And we just have to start off by saying thanks for joining us, Archie. How are you coping with the heat out there in Italy?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's tricky to start off with, but being out here for nearly a week now, and it's been getting used to it, but it has been a bit of a shock to the English cold weather. But the boys are getting used to the heat and adapting well.
I think, to be honest, you might have escaped the English hot weather. We're all melting over here this week, so you might have it a bit better than us at the moment.
Is it? Yeah, I've actually heard a few people say, but we're all in the same boat. It seems like.
Yeah, I mean, it looked pretty brutal in the match on Sunday. How were the boys coping in that weather? It looked pretty draining.
Oh, terrible. The worst was we had training, so we came out on the Sunday. And then we had training, I think it was the Tuesday or the Wednesday, and that was like our main session. And it was like 33 degrees, and it was an absolute shock to everyone. First time playing in that sort of heat. Because we had quite a few days until the game. Like it was such a big training session, and massive shock to people. And going into the game as well is definitely one of the hardest. But I only played 20 minutes, but that 20 minutes I got on. It was hard, definitely in that sort of heat.
Yeah, because you've had a bit of time off since Six Nations. Was it with your shoulder, wasn't it? And how was it getting back out on the paddock?
Yeah, so it's 5 months for me. At the start of Six Nations, sort of a lingering injury, and sort of hoping it would be all right. And going into the Six Nations, just praying my shoulder would sort of basically hold together. And spoke to the surgeon before Six Nations, and basically said to me that you're probably going to need surgery now or later on the line, but carrying on is not going to not going to make it worse. So I sort of went with the choice of let's just see how it is, and unfortunately it wasn't. So yeah, no, it's been a long 5 months, and I've had massive amount of help from the physios and coaching staff at Saints. But yeah, no, it's been tricky, and to get back out on the pitch the other day, it's so good, such a good feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. With your coming on, well, your clubmate starting at 9. How's that between the two of you, sort of both vying for that 9 shirt at Saints and at England? How do you navigate that between you?
Oh, that's great. We've actually housemates, so we've been sharing a house. So me, Johnny, and Billy Pascoe have been sharing a house for the past year. So we
Yeah,
know him quite well, obviously. Um, Sharing a house with him for a year, and I think it's great for both of us. Similar ages, same club, same position, just pushing each other on.
yeah.
Um, and for him, I've been out for 5 months. He's had a lot of opportunities, and he's taken them well. And obviously, he's had the 9 shirt here, and he's been playing well. And I'm gonna have to train well and play well to try to get back in the team, but it's definitely not a given.
So you never tempted just to stick like a wedge under the door, make sure he's late for training, make you shine a little bit or anything like that?
No, we'll get a dice order if we do that. It's England. There's no chance of doing that, risking that. But no, we have a good relationship, and I think that's really important in this team, especially being part of a team. Like even though the same position and really competing and wanting to have that shirt, it's important that it's your teammate and you want to push each other on to be better, and you're all part of a team and you want to make the team as best as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the mood like in Cab generally?
It's good. It's good. So obviously after the win against Scotland, it's been pretty good. Looking ahead now to South Africa, watching them absolutely dish up Australia. It's been really positive vibes, and I think as a collective, we're just really looking forward to the opportunity we're going to get. It doesn't come around a lot having massive games against teams in the Southern Hemisphere. So I think we're just really excited for the opportunity that's coming up.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, a lot of this squad's been together for a few tournaments now, and there's a lot of names there that are becoming like kind of more and more familiar, I think, with like the wider rugby public, and obviously with some of those names then going on to some really big things in Australia and this year as well. How do you kind of take inspiration for that, or how does that kind of feed into the team in terms of how you all, I guess, motivate yourselves and try and plan ahead for what you're trying to do in your career? Is that something you just draw a lot of energy from?
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously seeing your teammates. So if you look back at last year, the under-20s who won the World Cup and Six Nations, like the things that all they've gone on to done in such a short amount of time, it gives you so much motivation and encouragement that it's just around the corner, and if you keep on working hard and get your chances, then you're not far away. But yeah, no, I think as a squad, we're all motivated for the short-term goal of winning the World Cup, but I think as a
Yeah.
long-term goal, I think the pathway sort of in the under-18s and under-20s becomes so connected and sort of aligning it to work straight into the first team. So I think it's all connected, so you feel so comfortable going into a first team environment. So I think there's lots of motivation seeing your teammates go and do big things.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, how important would you say these under-20s competitions are at this stage? As you say, like the pathway is quite distinct now. There's a clear route, and certainly from an outsider's perspective, it seems to be really productive and producing some real talented players. When it comes to like the under-20s World Cup, how important do you think that is for like a player's development and being ready to taking further steps on?
Yeah, massive. I think we've actually talked about it a lot here about, as a kid, you dream on putting on the red rose, and you dream of playing for England, and even though it might not be the top level of what you're dreaming for, it's still under-20s and under-18 level, then you should really cherish the moment. It's a dream you've had.
The other question is where does under-20s World Cup rugby rank in kind of intensity compared to, because you've played Champions Cup rugby, you've played Premiership rugby. Where does it rank in intensity wise?
It's like it's weird because it's just completely different, I find. In terms of physicality, it's definitely a step down from Prem and Champ. But when you look at the speed side of it, I'd say it's up there with Prem. It's so quick. You obviously got players who are probably a bit lighter than, you know, the average Champ player, and you know, it's so quick, and you've got to be really fast thinking and smart about your plays. So I think as a whole, it's definitely a bit less physical, but you know, it's the speed is right up there, and the skills also right up there.
The physicality aspect of it, I think, from having watched, I mean, particularly this crop of players, the physicality feels like a real point of difference for this squad, and particularly in defence. You know, watching the Scotland game on Sunday, like as soon as sort of Scotland got into like multi-phase, that just kind of pressure from the England defence just seemed to keep pushing them back and back and back. Like, is that just like a very cultural thing for you as a team, or does it come from just having that exposure to more senior rugby in the Premiership and the Championship, do you think?
Yeah, I think a bit of both. I think, you know, the whole rugby is very physical, and usually whoever's the most physically dominant is going to get that front football and get those opportunities. And I think the whole training and mindset is around being physical. And I think once you be physical, like the first thing to do is be physical, and then your opportunities will come on the back end of that. So yeah, no, I think that's important.
Are there any like big energy bringers? I mean, they look like some real characters in that team. Who are the ones who just like trying to lead it on smashing up the opposition?
Uh, Kepu probably. He's a bit. He likes to lead with his chat. He's pretty big on that. I think Olamide Shadeke is very very big on that as well. He brings a lot of line speed. And sort of when he puts in a big hit, gets the whole team excited about it. And then also Louis Gully. Louis Gully, he's a big hitter as well. So there's definitely a lot of people in our team who bring energy through, you know, talking, but then also by doing.
Do you know, I reckon if you'd asked me to guess, I think Kepu and Olamide would have been two of my top guesses on that, just from the way they react to a big hit on the pitch.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
How about off the pitch? Who are the energy bringers off the pitch?
Kepu again loves a bit of chat. He loves a bit of that. Well, Junior is pretty big on that as well. And then Kane James, I'd say, is up there with bringing the comedy side of it.
It's always good to have characters in camp.
Exactly, yeah. No, it's important to keep the energy up and keep you excited throughout the weeks.
What do you bring during the week? Are you on the music? Are you starting the darts? What's your thing in camp?
I'm not on the music. Youngest is on the music, which is Will Knight currently. He's in charge of all the music. So he brings speakers to every training session, making sure he's on top of that. You know, for me, I'm pretty docile. I don't give too much shout like as Kepu, but yeah, I'd like to think I bring energy in my actions as well. So
it's a good professional answer, that, Archie. I like it.
Got to give them.
So you got to. Looking ahead to the South Africa game, obviously you don't want to give away the game plan at this stage or anything, but how do you prepare for that game, which is already kind of shaping up to be a bit of a pool decider?
Yeah.
What's the plan? How do you tackle that side?
Well, it's such like short turnaround, so it's 5 days between games, and so obviously the first day you're probably previewing Scotland, and then you've only got a couple of days to preview South Africa. And so, you know, we'll look at their game against Australia, and then their previous games. You know, we'll look at what we think we can put on them. Looking at the forwards, we'll look at what they could do in scrums and lineouts, and we'll look at the spaces that will be created. But in this environment, it's very focused on yourself. You know, we're a team that's sort of not had too much rugby together. You know, you go away to clubs, and when you come in, it has to be very focused on like what you're doing. But there's definitely the aspect of actually previewing what's coming on the weekend.
Mm. And how much does the experience of last year, where England brought home the title, is that something the squad can draw on to say, like, we've done this before, we know we've got that in us, Is that something that is kind of helping drive that ambition for this year as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's quite a few names who are involved in the team last year. So I think it's really important that we bring that experience to the squad. And I unfortunately wasn't involved in last year's World Cup through injury. So it's the first time for me with being such short turnarounds and the whole setup of the tournament. It's really important to have those players who have experienced the World Cup to give you tips on how to get through it all. But on the other hand, like, we're a completely different team, and like we've got loads of different new players. We got different calls, we've got a few different coaches. You don't want to really compare too much to last year. Like we're a completely different team. Obviously, our ambition of winning the World Cup is we're going to go through that with our own experiences rather than living off the back end of last year.
Yeah, cool. I mean, David and I are a little bit older. Well, so quite a bit older than you. Remember watching, the first time we won the Junior World Cup, and it felt like a real kind of sea change in kind of youth development in England. And I think we've had comments from other nations that we spend a lot of time on physicality and the physical side of things, but less so on the skills. That seems like something that's changed with the players like yourself, but also looking at someone like Will Knight, obviously his debut on Sunday, but looks like a lot of really well-rounded skill sets compared to, maybe what's traditionally thought about with England players. Like in your, I guess your own like personal development, but your kind of personal experiences, like do you think that's been more prioritized, or do you think that's just part of a different coaching mindset? Where do you think that change is coming from?
I think like if you could look at different teams and how they utilize, for example, their centers, like Harlequins or like a massive centre, and other teams will want a skillful small centre, another playmaker. I've worked a lot with Mark Mapletoft, so I was with him in the under-18s and then now under-20s, and the way he sees the game and the way he wants to play is very exciting. I think it's more based on coaches pushing what they want to see. So yeah, no, I'd agree. There definitely has been a massive shift from becoming more skillful and also powerful rather than sort of being just powerful. But yeah, I think that's definitely down to the coaching.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I wouldn't be a Saints fan if I didn't try and ask a couple of Saints questions. So apologies if I'm overstepping my line. But obviously, Northampton have 4 guys out in Australia at the moment. So are they reporting back to the team about the things going on out there, and have they successfully hidden Bill from Henry Pollock? It's a question where you want to know the answer to.
I've seen a few videos of them hiding Bill. I think that's happened a few times now, and
very good.
Seeing him having to do a few punishments. So I think I've probably seen as much of you've seen on that. But yeah, no, I've not really seen too much contact. I've been out here doing my thing, and they've been out here doing their thing. But yeah, no, it's massive to have 4 Saintsmen in the Lions team. So it was one of the most in the Premiership, and it's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's it like from a Saints perspective and your personal perspective, having those kind of characters and those people around you in that team? And again, I may be incredibly biased, but it does look like a really tight-knit group. And I don't know if that's something that is really common or whether it feels like something quite special whilst you're in it. I just wonder from your perspective, does it feel like a really tight-knit environment like it looks like from the outside?
Yeah, massively. I think with us all being quite a young group, like there's a lot of off the pitch connections that are made in Northampton. Most of the lads sort of live together and go to coffee shops on off days and hang out a lot. And I think that's really good in team environment. We're not just working together and then go home and not speak to each other. Like we're all good mates and we'll get on well. And I think that's really important for the present, obviously playing together, but also for the future. I think the closer we can be, the better we'll be as a team.
And just in terms of your future, Archie. So obviously got this tournament. So I know that's the the thing you'll be worried about most. I'm sure that you'll have no eye to the future just right this second. But if you're sort of looking ahead at your own development and I guess breaking into men's rugby next season, where are you sort of targeting this year? Are you looking at Saints? Are you looking at, getting some experience in the championship maybe, or is it, what are your kind of plans over the next kind of season in terms of where you're going to go?
Yeah, so I think for me, like it's definitely changed a lot, setting out goals for last season and then getting injured. And I think sort of a bit of an eye-opener to what injury can do. But for me currently, like I just wanna, just start playing a lot of rugby and obviously I get the opportunity out here and sort of get slowly drip fed into playing more rugby, and hopefully that will push me well into Saints pre-season and train hard there. And there's obviously very good nines at Saints with Mitchell, Tom James, and Jonny Weimann. And I think you've got it's going to be really competitive. We're all going to push each other. And for me, I just want to focus on myself and focus on pushing myself to be the best player I can be. And hopefully that will take care of itself.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I was in anticipation. This was watching some of the highlights that you've got up on people have put together of you on YouTube. So the only disappointment is you don't still have the bleach blonde hair. I was wondering, would that make a comeback at all?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's horrible. It's one of the worst things I've done. I actually can't believe I did that. But my parents liked it. My granny liked it, so they could see me on the TV easily and see me at games easily. But that's about the only compliment I've ever had on my bleach blonde hair. So that's
Oh,
definitely not coming back. That's in the past.
that's a real shame. I thought it was a hell of a look.
No, you should try it. It's not a look. It's a good idea
Unfortunately,
until you try
yeah,
it.
yeah. I don't have enough left to start messing around with it. I've got to take care of the precious few hairs I've still got.
Yeah, before they
Yeah.
turn grey like mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of kind of, and again, I'm trying not to be Northampton specific, but it does seem like there's a lot of talent coming through at the moment. Like academies are churning out talent left, right, and centre. And you spoke there about how you're just focusing on getting better at your game, just so then you can place yourself in best pace possible. How do you like as an individual kind of drive yourself? Like what do you do to make sure that you're doing absolutely everything you can do to kind of make sure you're in as best place as possible to be getting those minutes in top level rugby?
Um, I think once you get to men's rugby, it's obviously when you're at school and when you're in the academy, you obviously got coaches always the whole time, pushing you to do extras, pushing you to do skills and stuff. But when it gets to the top level with men's rugby, it's very self-led. Like if you want to get better, the coaches will be there to help you, but you've got to push yourself to do that. So for me, I've obviously been out for 5 months and worked on skills and strength aspects, but it's all good doing skills and doing kicking. But I think the most important thing is playing rugby, especially at a young age. The academy coaches say the best way to get better at rugby is playing it. And I think for me, I just want to play as much rugby as I can, no matter where that is, which I think will give me the best opportunity to get better.
Another question is who was your rugby idol inspiration growing up?
For me, a bit of a weird one because I moved to scrum-half at the age of 16, just at the start of lockdown. So I was actually a fly-half and sort of fullback. So I was keen on Dan Carter and Mike Brown.
Okay.
Yeah, watching them at a young age. Well, obviously the skills of Dan Carter, but the running game of Mike Brown really it was good to watch and something I sort of aspired to be. But getting moved to scrum half at 16, absolutely nosed off Anton Dupont, just watching him the whole time and watching how ridiculous he could be. But then it got to the point where I was doing so much ridiculous stuff. I just had to start watching other people to make me feel better about myself. But yeah, no, I'd say at a young age it's Mike Brown and Dan Carter, but recently it's definitely lent towards Dupont.
Yeah, some quite contrasting styles between Mike Brown and Dan Carter. I mean, two players I love watching, but Mike's a bit more on the abrasive end of the
Yeah,
scale than Dan Carter ever was.
yeah, yeah. No, not very similar, but both exciting to watch.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's really really good to chat with you, Archie. All I can say is I'm just really grateful that you've managed to find time in your busy schedule to come and give us some of your thoughts and your feelings on things going on. From our perspective, we try and champion kind of like future rugby. We like to talk about academy rugby. We like to talk about kind of age grade rugby, and kind of really appreciate you coming on and talking about the Under-20s World Cup. We won't bore you with our own analysis of the game because I'm sure you've got more educated and probably in-depth analysis already been given to you. So we won't bore you with what our thoughts were of the game. But yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you for kind of giving us this time of yours. And obviously we are fully backing England to bring it home again because it's got to be done. I'm sure
It's got to be done.
It'll happen. It's got to be done. It's got to be done.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on.
Appreciate your time, Archie. Thanks so much.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
No, cheers. How about that, Rory? We had Archie McParland on the podcast, on our little podcast.
We're going places, David.
We're going places. And yeah, obviously, lots of thanks to Archie for coming on and indulging us with his presence. We really appreciate it. And in keeping with the theme of Archie McParland, we're going to talk Under-20s World Cup rugby because that kicked off this weekend. It wasn't just Lions taking place this weekend. The old Red Rose was strutting its stuff in Italy. So, what were your thoughts, Rory, on the England versus Scotland Under-20s World Cup game?
I thought, all in all, I think the team will be really, really pleased with that result. First up in the tournament, always a bit of a banana skin against the old enemy. You know, you don't want to slip up in what is a tough group. First up against, you know, a team that's got basically nothing to lose. You know, Scotland have been promoted from the tournament below back into the World Under-20 Championship this season. They've got a lot to prove in this one and a lot to show that they belong there. So I think first and foremost, professional, get the job done, score some good tries, lay down a marker. You know, got a few boys who are maybe not necessarily nailed on for the start in some of the you know, on paper tougher games, who showed what they're about. You know, players like Will Knight on debut at 12.
Very impressed with him.
Gloucester boy, really impressive. Only 18. Looks a big lad. Looks like a really promising player.
Good size.
Really, yeah. He's got to be 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah, I'm not sure, but he looked like he would fill that shirt well for an 18-year-old as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good line for his try as well, and just generally looked very, very solid in that position. So players like that, Tyler Afire on the wing. You know, again, he's had a bit of exposure in the Premiership. He's had a bit of exposure in the Prem Cup.
Yeah,
but looked really, really assured.
Yeah.
A bit unlucky not to score a try first up. I guess shoulder charged out, so penalty try, brilliant. You know, we'll take that.
Yeah.
Nice little assist for Jack Bracken as well. All round very good. Jack Bracken in general, very good. He's really, really, really impressive player, isn't he? He looks like a proper talent there.
Yeah, he seems to have that bit of something different about. Although some players just have an air about them where they just seem a little bit slipperier than others. And he certainly has that elusiveness that you don't. I don't know whether it's a coachable thing or it's just a natural thing, but whatever it is, he has it.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem to be just got down easy, like a bit of the Jack Noel about him.
Yeah, exactly that. Like it's just that extra bit of fight you usually get. Like even when they're tackled, it's usually past a gain line of some sort. Don't go down easy. Really impressive. Topped the defenders beaten for England. Obviously, he was excellent. Very impressed with him. Also, another one that's probably worth a good name check would be Kane James.
Oh, great try. I mean, he scored two, but the line for his second and run it in from 40, 50 metres.
Yeah, in that heat.
In that heat, yeah, wheels. Huge wheels on him. Really, really impressive, and had to be impressive. You know, we'll talk about the slightly more unfortunate incident. in this game in a minute, but I thought Kane James, really stood up as, given that last year and actually up until the second or third game of the Under-20s Six Nations this year, they had young Master Pollock in that back row doing a lot of the spectacular bits with the ball in hand. Kane James and others, but I thought particularly Kane James really stepped up as being that point of difference ball carrier and showing that pace isn't gone from that pack with Pollock not being there. So, no, really, really impressive from him. In general, a pretty good performance. I think there will be some concerns about the pressure they were under at the scrum time. I know it wasn't the start scrum. And actually, what surprised me most was the pressure at scrum really changed when Kepu Tuipulotu was on. And actually, props themselves, it was Ty Raymond and McEachran, wasn't it? Yeah. And the hooker was...
Louis Gully.
Gully, sorry, apologies, Louis Gully. Who was generally quite busy around the park, bit of a struggle with the darts at times. But actually, he's just a much slighter player than Tuipulotu. Maybe just not a natural scrummaging hooker.
Yeah.
And you could see that when Tuipulotu came on, because he got carded at one point. Tuipulotu came on for a 10-minute spell, and it was night and day at scrum time there. Which big plus for Kepu Tuipulotu to prove that he's got another string to his bow that he's a scrummaging hooker on top of everything else. I mean, he should be at that size, but it's not guaranteed with hookers, as we know.
Yeah,
they're not always the world's strongest scrummagers, no matter their size. But probably also something for Gully to go away and work on, because the difference was so stark. You couldn't help but say, actually, that is the reality of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when the props changed. And had Tuipulotu again inside. Scrum changed entirely. But I do wonder whether, I think it was Blythe Lafferty, the Scotland tight head, I believe. He looked like a young prop who's been brought up to scrum and scrum alone, and he did a pretty good job.
I thought actually both of their props looked pretty good. The loose head, who's
Jake Shearer.
Jake Shearer looked a big lad. Looked tall. I thought both of their props were two that they. If I was in the Scotland setup in general, I'd have walked away from that game going, right, get those two, make sure they're in a set program, make sure we're keeping them absolutely on the straight and narrow, because Scotland have struggled to produce props consistently.
Yeah.
It's not unusual. Some nations just do. Those two actually look like a couple that could well
they're worth sticking
go on to develop. Yeah, 100%. I think in general though, Scotland. I mean, they were missing Freddie Douglas, who's a massive loss to that pack. But some really good performance. I thought Noah Cowan at 9, really, really good. Apart from his yellow, I thought Fergus Watson on the left wing looked really impactful with ball in hand. Actually, the whole back three for Scotland, I thought looked dangerous when they got the ball.
Moments.
Yeah, good moments. Kerr Yule at 12.
I was very impressed with Kerr Yule. I thought, good jackal threat. Ran some really good lines.
Yeah, no, I think Scotland can really hold their heads up high off the back of that one, because England's point of difference is that physicality they bring, particularly in defence. You could see that when Scotland were going through multi-phase, they did struggle to consistently make ground. But they were very good on the counter attack. If they could break through that first tackle, they could make ground quite quickly. And they caused England a lot of problems, caused some real discipline problems. So I think Scotland can come away with that and say there's a few players here we really should stick with, which is actually from Scotland's perspective. I'm sure they're realistic enough. They don't go into these tournaments expecting to win the title. If they did, I'm sure they'd be delighted.
Yeah.
But that's this is a development channel for them, as it should be for all teams. But success is different nation by nation. And Scotland can come away thinking we've got some players that we can really see pushing on, and I think they should be pretty pleased with that. We should talk about the unfortunate incident.
We should talk about the red card, I think.
George Timmins.
Bit of stupidity.
he was having a really good game as well.
He was.
He had some really good moments with the ball in hand, and he was a player who I hadn't really seen before the Six Nations, and I was really, really impressed. Looks a real handful, both sides of the ball, physical player.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, at this point, he got too physical. I love a cheap shot. Don't get me wrong. I love a cheap shot in a game, and I've dished out and received many of them. You know, my nose isn't crooked.
Did nearly miss it.
Yeah, they did. My nose isn't crooked for no reason. But this was it was a real red miss moment, and it's dark because he's going to miss the rest of the tournament now, I think.
Yeah.
And he deserves to. You know, the reality is, you know, he's absolutely reaping what he's sown there. But it's just a shame because he'd played so well up to that point, and he was likely to be so instrumental in what England were going to try and do in this tournament.
I think he would be in a lineup for the final should England make it to the final for the championship. So like it is a big player to lose.
Yeah, it is. You'll know better than me what their options are in that position now. Whether they put Junior Kapoku at 6, maybe. Or...
I think that'll be the natural thing to do because obviously I just got reminded again when Shodake came off the bench and was overshadowing Kapoku. Like he is an absolute mammoth of a man. He's
such a big lad.
Such a unit, and him alongside Burrow in the second row. Kapoku in 6 isn't a bad option. Obviously, there's Ainsworth Cave as well, who also came off the bench. So I think those are the two options come any final we make it to. But yeah, it is just a shame. As you say, he was having a really solid game. I've been impressed with him. He's one in the Bath Academy at the moment, so you know at this point in time, Bath don't invest in anyone who doesn't have a big future ahead of them at this point. So obviously they know he's got big things ahead of him. But hopefully it is just a one-off kind of red mist moment, and it's not something that's more something that might haunt him through a career about having those multiple red mist moments that we've seen some players unfortunately kind of just have. Hopefully it's something, he is still young, it's something that can be worked on, and it was just a one-off. But yeah, it's just a shame. And with these games, you don't want one of the main talking points to be those sorts of situations, but you can't really skirt around it, can you?
No, you can't. It's just one of those, you have to address it as a big incident. But, you know, I say it hopefully isn't something that we're reflecting on too long, and I'm sure he'll go away and learn from it, and I'm sure he'll have, have had some words to address to his squad mates, and you know, and say he'll go again in the future. But all in all, I thought this was a really good game. I say Scotland more than played their part. They scored a couple of really good tries, got a penalty try as well. So they can hold their heads up really high from this one, and England will be able to come away and say that they've exposed a few players to the tournament. A few players have come back in. Archie, obviously, Ben Redshaw came on, scored a really nice try. Will Knight's obviously been exposed to that level and didn't look out of place. So yeah, lots of good positives from there, but massive improvements will be needed against some other teams. You know, there were some daft moments. It was Cohen's forward pass with the try line begging, and just a few poor skills moments here and there. But
I'll put that down
in that heat, in that circumstance, you can understand how these things can happen.
Yeah.
But they've got the first win under their belt, and tournaments are all about momentum. So that'd be important.
In the bag.
Yeah, 100%. Shall we run through some of the other games? I haven't watched all of them, but I watched a few of them.
Yeah, so
massive result for South Africa against Australia.
Completely unexpected, that sort of scoreline. Putting 70-plus points on Australia when not that recently, quite recently, Australia had beaten South Africa. That's quite the turnaround. I think a couple of players to take note of would be, is it Guillermo Mento, the fullback, racked up 200-odd metres carrying. Flakani looks an absolute monster in the loose. Neoli, again, another one looks an absolute monster in the loose. So they've got some serious ball carriers, and as we've said, England up against them next round. They're going to have to find serious levels to compete with that. It's in them.
Yeah, it's a crunch game for that pool, though, isn't it? Probably.
It's definitely a crunch game for that pool.
But Australia will be looking for massive improvements as well. I wouldn't write them off in
not
their
at
next
all.
couple.
Not at
There's
all.
there's some talented boys in there. Beyond that, Spain sticking with France, but eventually succumbing to the quality 49-11. Who was impressive for you in that game?
So ultimately in the first half, I was impressed generally with Spain and how they were sticking in there. So a couple of names that I've picked out already on the socials. Pichard, Otamendi, Infer, the scrum half, they all kind of impressed for me. For France, Tom Levesque, one of the wingers, looked pretty dangerous, picked up a couple of tries. He looked pretty handy. Kelatona, I think the fly half, looks like he's got something about him as well. I wasn't overly impressed with the France pack, which is something I thought was going to be a big point of difference, but I'd say Spain more or less matched them up until the subs. And then Spain
maybe
had a
mixed squad for France.
Yeah. So it probably would have been a mixed squad for France, let's face it. So they had Kanta Samba in the second row, who looked like a pretty handy player. They did kind of ring the changes at half-time as well. Wasn't not a great deal to come out of that game for me. That was hugely notable. Ireland versus Georgia. Again, Ireland, professional, got the job done kind of game. I was quite impressed with Tom Wood, the fly half. He seemed like a very good rugby IQ type kicker. Had some really nice... He had a monster 50-22 at one point in the first half, I think it was. But I think the player that really stood out for me was the Georgia 9, Spandarashvili.
Yeah, I thought he was really impressive. Actually, the Georgia 8 as well. I thought those two dovetailed very well. Shioshvili, I think is the 8.
Yeah, he was very good.
No, I think Georgia probably gave Ireland a real scare in that one. I don't know whether Ireland were expecting to be as strong as that. But Georgia looked no mugs, and they're not going to be for the faint-hearted because they've got some big lads in that pack in particular, as you'd expect from a Georgian outfit. Ireland, it's maybe not their strongest under-20 squad based on the Six Nations, but they'll probably expect bigger and better things in the rounds to come and might hope to pull off a win against France if they can. But I mean, an interesting game, nice and physical, some good moments. Ireland just tactically probably stronger and, in the end, outmaneuvered Georgia really, but Georgia really clung in there.
Yeah, it was a bit of an arm wrestle, which is what I kind of expected from that game. And I like it when the games are competitive, because it is quite easy to have, at this level, quite huge swings in scorelines. And a game I thought there was going to be a huge swing in a scoreline, but there wasn't, was New Zealand versus Italy.
This was a wrestle.
14-5. 14-5. And Italy, on another day...
could have won this one. Had a lot of ball, had a lot of possession. New Zealand... I think New Zealand were probably shocked by Italy's physicality in defence. Italy put in some really big shots. I would also say that Italy in general are not to be taken for granted at this level. The pipeline of players they're bringing through has been strong for a few years, but this generation in particular, there's a few players there that people should be very excited about. I mean, Enoch Opoku-Gyamfi is a unit.
And another one at the Bath Academy.
Yeah, another one at the Bath Academy. He's just massive, and if he gets himself in international rugby playing nick, he's going to be a real handful. Nelson Casatelli, the number 8, really physical, really good both sides of the ball. Nicola Benny, the 9, I was pretty impressed with.
Yep.
And that's an area where Italy haven't produced a quality player for some time, and actually he looked like an exciting. I mean, and Tadaro, who we've seen play centre a fair bit, but slotting in the fullback again. Looking very, very comfortable there. I mean, Italy really hung in on this one. Actually, probably outplayed New Zealand for large periods of this game. Maybe not necessarily a vintage crop for New Zealand, but they had some strong performances.
No, but there's a few players in that New Zealand team where there's a lot of hype. There is hype around some of these players. So that Mosesi Basson, there's a lot of expectation on him. The back three with Rico Simpson, Stanley Solomon, Frank Vainuku, who they all had okay games, but there's a lot of hype around.
Yeah, I mean, I think Frank Vianuka in particular looked dangerous with the ball in hand, but actually, I mean, they didn't carve Italy up. They found the edge a few times and caused them some problems, but Italy were able to disrupt their attack a lot and actually were able to outmuscle them for much of the game, which is not, it's not something you'd necessarily associate if you were to take these two teams as as sort of stereotypes. You wouldn't necessarily expect an Italy team to completely outmuscle a New Zealand team, but realistically they did. They would probably had the edge on them at scrum time as well. It's pretty even for a lot of it, but I'd say overall Italy probably had the edge there. So yeah, New Zealand can probably come away from this one breathing a bit of a sigh of relief.
Yeah, I think so. It's an interesting way. It sets up that pool quite interestingly because they didn't get the bonus point. And I think Italy will probably come away feeling a bit more positive about that than New Zealand probably were. And then the other game in that pool, Wales versus Argentina, where Wales took an early lead, and then Argentina clawed them back. Yeah,
I saw bits and pieces of this one. I mean, great signs for Wales that they were competitive in this one because that's a strong Argentina crop.
Yeah.
There's some good hype around the Welsh Under-20s sides. Obviously, off the back of denying England the Six Nations Grand Slam, deservedly. No, I think they'll be pretty pleased with this performance, although maybe disappointed to not have won it in the end. The Argentina side, in the end, they're just a little bit too strong for them. But what I would say is, if I were New Zealand in that group, I would be thinking we are not guaranteed to get out of this group as top seeds.
No, I think Argentina are a real threat to them. Felipe Ledesma is one that I think had a pretty solid game in the centres.
Not related to...
I'm not sure if he's related to the former hooker. I think it's quite a common surname. I may be wrong. But again, he looked pretty handy. Who else? Timoteo Silva picked up a nice couple of tries. And they've just got a really good pack as well. And I think on the Wales side, Harry Beddle's the one to pull out. 22 tackles he made. That's a serious shift for an under-20s back rower. He for me, he just reminds me of Tommy Raffel in the way he plays, his style. He's the sort of flanker that you just absolutely hate playing against because they just turn up everywhere.
I mean, I say green shoots for Welsh rugby. If they can build on the success of this team and the quality in this team, then they should start to see some positive very soon, which we all hope for. At the end of the day, they didn't win this game. Argentina won it. They were too strong for them in the end, and that probably puts them in a position where they're going to have to try and turn over New Zealand and Italy to get very far in this group, which is going to be a tough order for them.
Very tough order.
But I think they'll be looking at New Zealand off the back of that Italy game and thinking we'll have a crack at them. We'll have a crack.
Absolutely. Because ultimately, I think for those sides, this tournament's about not finishing last and getting relegated back to the trophy. And I think Wales, from what I saw, I don't think they're in that equation. I don't think they'll be in that equation, but we'll see. But yeah, round 2 coming soon. It comes thick and fast in this summer of rugby. Next up,
some massive fixtures. England against South Africa.
South Africa is the big one.
Yeah, Argentina are playing Spain, the Latin derby. Wales are playing France, so there's a bit of a Six Nations matchup. We'll see how Wales go in that one. Georgia playing New Zealand, so they'll be up for that because that's the sort of opposition that they're always crying out to play against. So they'll be keen for that one. And Italy Ireland, which could be a real crunch match in that pool as well.
I think so. Yeah. So I think that a lot of the makeup of the pool's final standings is getting not necessarily decided, but the picture will become very clear. So yeah, we'll be back next week to talk about that, I'm sure. But moving on, Rory. Other little bit of rugby news and rugby stuff that happened today was the groups for the Challenge Cup and Champions Cup were announced. We haven't got an awful lot of time, but let's just run through the groups and see if we can pick out some of the key matchups and where we think opportunities may lay.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Pool 1 of the Champions Cup, we've got Toulouse, Clermont, Sharks, Saracens, Glasgow, Sale. which is it's going to be interesting. I mean, Toulouse Saracens looks a big matchup.
Yeah.
Glasgow will fancy their chances. Sharks will hopefully will want to improve on their European performances from last season and take another step forward. And Sale will think they can probably get something out of that group if they get. At this point, we don't know who's home and away, so we'll see how the fixtures land on that. That's an interesting one, but I would guess Toulouse will more or less cruise through that comfortably, and it'll be a bit of a scramble. Outside of that,
I'm interested to see the Battle of the Sharks. I think that'll be an interesting one.
Yeah, absolutely. That will be interesting. Who can be more South Africans in that one?
Exactly.
Pool 2: Bath, Toulon, Munster, Cast, Edinburgh, Gloucester. As a Gloucester fan, I am delighted by that draw. That's about as good a draw as we could have hoped for.
Yeah, I think if you're a Bath fan or a Gloucester fan, you're pretty happy with how that was. I think of all the pools, that's probably the more favourable one from a Premiership playing perspective, I'd say.
Yeah, not to disrespect the players, because Edinburgh, Cast, Munster, and Toulon, none of those are mugs. None of those are simple wins. But there's some more achievable matchups there. Gloucester beat Edinburgh in the Challenge Cup this season. They've beaten Cast in recent years, and Cast aren't necessarily that fussed about European.
They don't travel well, Cast.
No, Munster, are always a competitive outfit, but they're not necessarily the team they were 20 years ago. So they might fancy their chances. They're dependent on which side of the Irish Sea they're playing.
All I will say is you do want Cast at home, because Cast at their stadium, they have a pretty good winning record there. Yeah,
different gravy that. But also some cool away days. If it's a chance to go away to Munster, I might be booking myself a ticket to that one.
Yeah, I was crying out to get Edinburgh, because I think an away day to Edinburgh would be pretty good fun.
Yeah, that would be good. Good, probably from a Premiership perspective, you say yes. The Bath and Gloucester will be thinking we've got half a chance of getting through this one. Pool 3, I would say, is this year's group of death. Leinster, Tigers, Quins, La Rochelle, Bayonne, Bournemouth. I've had word from Quins supporting mates. They are gutted.
They're not happy.
We got this one. That's a tough one. Obviously, Leinster, La Rochelle is the big headline matchup there. There's always a grudge match there. So La Rochelle have made some shrewd signings, and they will be pretty hopeful of being competitive again this year. Bayonne looks like one of the great away days. If you get a chance to go and play, go and watch a game in Bayonne, take it, because I think when they start singing Le Bleu et Blanc before the game, it is something quite special to behold. Stormers, I don't know. They signed Ruben Ackerman, so they might be brilliant. But
you just never know the South African sides, do you?
Don't know. Yeah, you don't know if they're going to care. Tigers, we don't know really. With Jeff Parling coming in, but they made a Premiership final this year, so we shouldn't keep underestimating them, because we'll be in trouble again.
Yeah.
And then Leinster or Leinster.
Yeah, know that quite well.
Yeah.
And then Pool 4.
Pool 4, where your ears will prick up. Bordeaux Begler.
Yeah.
Scarlets, Bristol, Hoe, Northampton, Bulls.
Yeah.
So some winnable games for Saints there.
Yeah.
Potentially some tough games against Bordeaux and Bulls in particular, I would say. But
we beat Bulls in South Africa last year, so there's a bit of glimmer of hope.
Bit of a glimmer of hope there. Obviously the rematch from the final, which will be a nice little narrative. But I would say, on balance, you're probably not too upset by that draw.
I think Northampton get out of the group. Do I think they win the group and go top seed? I'm not sure. I think it depends on the draw with Bordeaux, whether it's home or away. I would be mighty keen for an away day to Bordeaux, though. As much as it would be a really hard game to win, I just like Bordeaux. Just like going there.
Away.
Repeat yourself.
Armob away.
I'm not against it. Rory. I'm not against it at all. Scarlets. It's nice to have a game nearby if that's an away one, and I'd like to think that would be a good chance of Northampton getting maybe 5 points. Poe's an interesting one, or Section Palois.
Yeah, I mean they've got. Yeah, I mean it's a classical French club. It's a storied old French club, having a real resurgence at the moment. They've had some interesting signs. I think they'll have both Simmons brothers there next season. I have a feeling they're now both signed there. The likes of Guillard, Sogbe, there's some strong players at Pau. So could be an interesting one. Depends how much they want to focus on Europe, probably.
Yeah,
and if you get them later in the year or late, early next year, by which point they may or may not already have given up on European rugby in favour of making the barrage.
Yeah,
might be a winnable game.
Yeah, and I think the curveball in this group is Bristol Bears, because the way they play, that could throw up some really oddball results, which could really put the table in like a weird skewed position. Because I'm not going to sit here and say Bristol Bears will beat Bordeaux, but Bristol Bears on their day could surprise a Bordeaux on an off day.
100%.
So I'm sitting and waiting the home and away fixture draws with eager eyes, put it that way.
Yes.
And the Saints versus Bordeaux final rematch. It was almost like it was written and predetermined, because there's a storyline already ready to go around the redemption and a chance for Saints to kind of get a bit of payback for all the noise that came out of that game. So I'm not unhappy with that draw myself personally at all.
I think you're pretty set up to make it through that group. Hopefully,
I'd like to think so.
I'm hoping Gloucester was. I'm hoping Gloucester will put some focus on Europe. I mean, they'll want to improve on their league position this year, obviously, but I'm really hopeful they will give Europe both barrels, because it would be nice to see them make the knockouts at least.
Yeah, I think the key for Gloucester is how quickly they can get all these new signings and all the chops and changes gelling together.
Yeah, that's going to be the big question for us, is assuming that everyone is there first day of pre-season, how well they can bed in and get everyone fit and ready and get a full squad. I think we can be excited about our prospects this season. So I'm very much looking forward to it. Yeah,
we just have to sit and wait patiently for the fixtures to be released, Rory, and then we can start planning the R-Mob away days. Because I'm up for it. Well, Rory, what a podcast we've had. Great pod. Great pod, if I do say so myself. But before we end the podcast, you know what's next. Do you have any final thoughts for the listener?
This time next week, listener, we will be able to say 12 of the starting 15 for the Lions. You heard it here first.
Well, there you have it, folks. Rory's made a commitment, so you hold him to that. But yeah, we've been Ruxmalls Overballs. Thank you, Archie McParland, for coming on and joining us. Come back next time for who knows what we'll talk about. Probably a bit of rugby.